All right, so we're back at it after kind of a little week hiatus. Anybody have any problems over last week? We were working on the girl in Italy, kind of cleaning up that image. A little Photoshop on with the healing brushes and the cloning tools. And I did drop a video last week about compositing. We're going to start going through some of that information today. So questions from any of that? Anything over the last week? Good. Everybody's good. All right.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. So well, let's get back into it then. Let's, well, I know you guys are hungry for the Photoshop. So let me get my share going on. And let me get my Photoshop up. All right. So I'm going to start today with camera raw, and you'll see the madness behind this on the website. Let me pull that up. On the website, there's two photos that are here. It says raw, photo 5 raw, photo 6 raw. When you click on that, it's going to download directly to your computer, unlike these where they're going to open up and you can kind of select and download. These are going to directly download to your computer. So feel free to do that. I have these already downloaded, so I'm going to work with them, and you guys can, feel free to work along with it as we're going. So let me talk about camera raw and what that is, and why that's going to be a big advantage to you guys as you start to work and you start to get creative. So one, raw is a setting that you can put on your cameras, and cameras I'm talking about medium to higher end cameras. So it's either the mirrorless cameras, Sony's, those kind of things, or your digital SLR, single lens reflect cameras, where interchangeable lenses and all that kind of stuff. They will be, and they're starting to get to that point where they're going to have a raw mode on the iPhone. And I believe there already is to some degree with some applications, but I don't think it's quite perfected yet. But the whole purpose of raw, what that is, it's to gather more data, more information for you to work with. So when we deal with a standard picture we take on our phone called a JPEG, typically, we're going to get about like this much data. Okay, when we shoot with a raw format, we're going to get like this much data. So what we're getting is like twice as much information and data that we can work with. And what does that data do? It allows us to bring out things that are in the blacks, things that are in the lights, things that might be washed out. It allows us a lot of leeway to correct and fix images, whether they're good or not. But it gives us a chance to fix. So I'm going to open up one of those pictures. So let me just go to my file and open, and you're going to see it opens up in a slightly different interface. Let me find our folder here. You'll notice the ending thing. It's not JPEG. Here I have PSDs. In this case, it says DNG, and DNG is basically a format saying it's a raw format. Sometimes they're going to show up for me. They'll say NEF, which is a Nikon format. If you have a Canon, it's going to be a different kind of extension at the end. And these are basically a raw format. So you can see there is a preview, okay, but it's not necessarily what it's going to be. So here's a preview of this one. I'm going to start with this one, J-Star or J3 Star. If you look at the preview right now, it looks black. Okay. And that's because the image is pretty much black. It's taken at night, but you're going to see when I open it up, we're going to be able to bring out the stars and bring out the scene that was there. On a typical picture, we get the picture. We can see the picture, whether it be a JPEG, here or a PDF, or even a PSD, we can kind of see what we've been doing and what we've been working with. With a raw file, you may or may not, depending on whether it's been processed or not. So let me open this one first, and I'm going to pull this. I got to get this back to where it was initially. Okay, so this is the start of that picture. You'll notice it opens it up in a kind of a new window. And this is a new window we're going to actually introduce today, which also ties through to a filter effect up here called Camera Raw. Now, you'll notice first there's this black area, and this is the picture. And then over here on the right, we have things like the temperature, the tint, exposure, contrast, black, white, textures, clarities. You even see we'll have things like the curves. Color grading, we can kind of mix the midtones, light tones, all that kind of stuff. We have optics, so we can kind of, the vignetting, we can kind of distort the pictures. There's another vignetting effect here. We can add grain. We can calibrate the picture to a certain setting, or push the reds or blues or greens here with that. So there's a ton to do there on this setting, which gives us an incredible amount of things that we can do. You can also do things, believe it or not, in here, healing brushes. You can do gradients, you can do red eye. That's a snapshot there. You can look at the presets that are there. So there's things that we can do here. I'm not doing all of these in RAW, but you can. RAW is a pretty powerful thing. And this RAW window is. And what this is doing is it's allowing us to make a mass amount of adjustments to an image all in one panel, all in one place, as opposed to what we've been doing before, where we're doing adjustment layers and all those kind of things to a picture. So this is a great place to start with to make those adjustments all in one time. Now, again, this picture looks pretty well like terrible, right? You're like, why would I ever print this picture out? But I want to show you what's really here, because the camera, remember the Camera Raw captured all this data. It's capturing all these blacks and these whites that are way out there that the normal JPEG didn't capture. There's stuff here, and I'm going to start to bring that out. I'm just moving these sliders along to kind of pull out what's happening in this picture. And if you see, I can start to make this picture actually almost appear pretty well daylight kind of thing. You'll see the rocks will start to appear. You can pull those out. Now, again, I'm pushing things to the extreme, and you can see here zero contrast. That kind of things got kind of grayed out. So I probably don't want to go that far. This is the highlights. You can kind of see here, let me pull that back and forth, what that's doing. And this bright spot over here, this is the light coming up from Palm Springs down in Joshua Tree. And then we have the shadows. You can see I can pull those up and down. My whites, look, I can make it really, the rocks down here look kind of daylight. It got very grainy. You can see all the grain in there. Okay, so I probably don't want to do that completely. And the same thing with the blacks. I don't want to go all the way up. And then we got things like the temperature. I can change the temperature of the picture. Okay, so we were somewhere in here. You can tint it a little bit more purple or more green, blue. I'm gonna go over here a little bit. Let's kind of pull this up a little bit. And then I want to pull up the texture, a little clarity. I'm sharpening things, dehazing. I want the colors a little bit more vibrant and saturated. And again, I'm playing down here. So I'm just kind of making raw or quick, I should say, quick adjustments to this picture. So when we opened it, it was here. And now we're here. And you can see what I'm doing is making adjustments here on the temperature, exposure, etc. Okay, so we've made dramatic improvements here with this. I'm gonna go back this way a little bit. And let's do that. I'm just gonna group a little more with it. This up here, this is a plane in the sky that took the camera day. So this was an exposure of 25 seconds. It was an ISO of 100 and a a 12 millimeter lens was used, and it was kind of set at an f4 for the camera fans out there. So that's my settings of my picture. Now I'm going to open it now. So what I'm going to do is when I open this, it's going to go from this window into our traditional Photoshop that we're used to. But I want to click down here. If I just click open, it just opens like a normal photo. If I open as an object, what it's really going to be doing, it's called opening, it's a smart object. And I'm going to show you why that is an advantage, not just with RAW, but when we're dealing with other pictures. So we're going to open it as a smart object. And here we are. So at this point, it looks pretty much normal. This looks normal, except there's a little icon here in the corner. And this is an icon telling me that it's a smart object. Okay. And what's the advantage of a smart object? Well, the advantage of a smart object in this particular case, when I double click on it, it's going to open back up in Camera Raw and let me make adjustments. So I brought this in and I'm like, oh, cool. Well, you know what? I think maybe I want to go change the color a little bit. So instead of going down here and doing an adjustment layer and trying to work with things that way, I can literally double click on the picture. It's going to open back up into this Camera Raw interface. I can now come back through and change my color settings. Click OK. It's making those adjustments and updating them. And it just made change to the picture. Now, again, it's not changing anything. It's not a permanent change. It's just a temporary change. And because it's a RAW file that we're kind of working with, the RAW file gets updated. You can't save files as RAW. You can only save them as, in this case, PSDs or JPEGs or whatever. So when you go up here to your files and your saves and save as, you will never see a RAW document here because you can't do RAW. What happens is RAW kind of saves itself. There's a little kind of computer magic going on behind the scenes, and it will update the image to whatever changes we've made. But again, it's not a saving thing, meaning what I do in the Photoshop file, I can't make it a RAW file. Does that make sense? RAW is RAW, and that's the way it is. It's always going to be that way. If I make changes, it saves it in the RAW file here. But if I add something to this picture, it won't save it that way. So if I make we'll just do a new layer and just kind of do a triangle. Okay, and I put that there. This is on the picture now, but when I save it, I have to save it as a PSD or some other kind of file where I can keep my layers going. I can't resave it as a JPEG. I'm sorry, as a RAW file. Okay, so this layer down here is completely separate and will kind of work independently than anything else. Does that make sense? And it gets a little confusing, but tell me if you don't get it so I can make sure I go over it again. Get the chat back open here. Make sense, everybody? And this?
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right. Okay. So in the RAW files, I'm able to make these adjustments. I can change it. I can come back and, again, double clicking it, redo the colors if I want to. I can lighten it. I can darken it. Everything's kind of completely adjustable to where it was when it first opened up. Okay. And now every time I open and say, okay, it's just going to go back to that original file, update the smart file. Okay, to be like that. So with RAW, I've got all this data. Initially, it looked like it was a black picture. And if I looked at the JPEG that I took of that same photo, it would have been black, pretty much. Okay, and there's only so much information I can get out of a JPEG. But with a RAW file, I can get a bazillion amounts of information. Now, and again, what's I think is kind of this, it's relatively new to Photoshop, meaning it's a couple versions ago, is they added up here under the filters, a Camera Raw filter. So I want to show you what that does and how we can tie that into this kind of our work interface. And this is all going to kind of lead us into compositing and bringing things together, because you want to be able to do things and be able to make adjustments kind of on the fly. So I'm going to open up just another picture Let me just see which one I want to pick up here. We'll do the iceberg. It's always a good picture. So we have the iceberg here, normal opening. Again, we would normally duplicate the start. I'm going to turn that off. Now, I want to start to use some of these filters up here. And with Photoshop, if I start to do a filter on this, and I'm going to do a ripple effect. And let's see what's going to show me. There we go. So we did that. And we can see it kind of made the picture all blurry. There's kind of ripples going on. And you notice it just kind of did it to the layer. There's no apparent way to go back and change it or fix it. The only thing we can do is go back to our history and undo it. Okay. But there's nothing we can do 6 hours from now or 2 hours from now. Again, the filter becomes a destructive thing. Okay, remember, we're always trying to work in a non-destructive way. So if we add a blur to this, all right, we're just going to go so it's there. It is destructive, meaning now this filter or this layer has a blur on it. And again, there's always a time where it might be fine, but it's always I think we always want to try to work so we can have options available to us. So if we want to change the blur 10 minutes from now or 10 days from now, we can go back and do that. I'm just going to undo that completely. Before I do the blur, I want to do one step. But before I do any of these filters, I want to do one thing. And that is up here where it says convert to smart filters. What I'm really doing is it's kind of confusing the way they have it showing here. But it's really what I'm doing is converting this layer to what they call a smart object. Okay, so I'm going to convert to a smart here, and you'll see it gave me that little icon that we had back over here in the raw file as we brought it in. So what this is doing is it's bringing it back in to some adjustments. And now if I go up here and do a filter, we'll do the same, we'll do the blur, do the Gaussian blur again, put that in. You'll see that it added it as a smart filter down below. I can literally turn it on and off. Now, by also being a smart object, if I double click on the JPEG, it opens it up and you see it opens it up into a brand new window. Okay. And it's got this weird little PSB, which basically means it's kind of like a template file, meaning it's attached to this other file back here. And I'm going to actually do a color shift in here. And I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do it as a adjustment layer. And again, I'm making that mask, so it's only going to work on the filter, the layer below. That's the only thing I want. So here it is. And then I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to close it. And you'll notice it did it over here. It changed it back. It brought that color shift into here. Okay, so here's that color shift. So let's say I'm working and I'm going, well, I don't want that color shift anymore. I can double click on it. It comes back over to here to where it was. You see it opened up in a new window again. I can double click and I can change that filter to something else. Okay, save it. Close it, and you'll see back here, it changed it, okay? So this marking with the smart filters allows us to work and be changing things as we go. There are some limitations to smart filters, and you will run into them where you're going, well, I want to do this, but it says I can't. An example is this lens blur. It won't let you do it as a smart filter. It's just the way the computer has been programmed. So there's going to be occasionally cases where you can't do things because it's a smart filter. But 90% of the time you can. And if you ever want to make it back, this is rasterized, and here it says a smart object. It brings it back into a normal state. Okay. I don't really see a need to do that too often. If I need to keep it as a normal state, I would just simply save it as a JPEG or something like that that I would end up using later. But smart objects are really kind of cool and powerful that way. And you can use them in multiple ways. So over here, we've got this picture, which was a JPEG. I'm sorry, which was a raw file. That's a smart object now. So it's going to take it back to raw to fix. I can import another photo. Let me just take the iceberg picture. I'm going to take the original. Command Alt, Command C. I'm going to paste it into this picture. Okay, and I'm going to just enlarge it to scale it up. Okay, and now I'm going to make this a smart object. Convert to smart filters. So again, don't get confused by the statement. It's smart. It's a smart object or smart filter. They're basically the same. It just depends on how the computer is looking at it or displaying it. And now this is a smart object. If I double click on that layer icon, we can open it back up. And here it is as the original. I can go in here, make a change that I want. Bump up the vibrance, saturation, close it. Said you should save it. Yes, I want to save before I close. And it made that change over here. Okay, so I have two, in this case, two smart objects. And again, I can still do things here. If I want to add a adjustment layer here, I can. We're just going to do exposure. And I can do that. And right now it's exposing everything. But remember, if I click on that, it's only going to expose the layer directly below what we're working with. Okay, so that's okay. So here it is, that adjustment layer that's been done. And then we've got that clipping mask that's basically allowing it to work directly below where it is. Okay, so no matter what's directly below this, it will. If I move this up, it now made that change on this picture. Okay. All right. So the clipping paths or clipping mask are something we definitely want to do. But again, we can work in a kind of a more streamlined fashion by using smart objects. Okay. And it allows us to come back and make those changes quickly. So if we, like, again, it's all about adjustments. And as we start to get into these ideas of compositing, bringing different items together, they're going to be coming at different times from different sources with different images. And the goal is to be able to kind of make it look like one. And we'll be doing a lot of adjustments with color and light direction, and clarity and the highlights and darks. So by doing smart objects, it allows us to make those changes in a quick way and in a non-destructive way, which is really kind of the most important part of the software. Questions on that so far, on the smart object?
I don't think so. It kind of looks like it sort of does it for you as you're going. Just
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, it does. You just have to tell it to make it a smart object. Does that make sense? You have to literally go up here to filter, and this won't do it because it's already been converted, but convert the smart object to smart filter. Does that make sense? And if you open a raw file, you have to do it also. So I'm going to open up the other raw file that we have, just to show you, because I think at the nighttime it's real easy to see. It's black and nothing's there. But this is a daytime shot that was shot with raw. So again, we opened it up here. I'm going to go back to where it was initially. This is how it showed up from the camera. And again, it's not bad, but the whole point is to kind of be able to adjust. And there's like a lot going on down here. I think I can brighten up a little bit. And I think we can get some more detail out of the stones. And the sky is getting a little weird, but I'm gonna do a big fix on the sky. So I want to I'm just playing around. I always like to kind of go both ways. Like, where do I want to go? So, maybe I like that blue sky, but that's just too dark for the rocks and definitely for the foreground. And that's obviously way too bright. So if you shot a picture and it was overexposed, meaning it came out looking like that, if you brought it into RAW and it was a RAW photo, you could bring it back. You can bring it back to where it should be with your exposure. Okay, so I'm going to darken it just a little bit. The contrast, again, I like to play with to see where it's going to go. And I can also look up here on my curves. It's kind of a visual. You kind of want things to kind of go across the whole spectrum. If you're in one side or the other, you can see here where it's peaking on both ends. There's nothing kind of in the middle. That means it's not probably properly exposed. So I'm going to pull the contrast down a little bit. Highlight, I'm looking at that. What's that doing? Well, it's just kind of pulling the sky out. A little bit of the waterfall, but I'm not worried about that right now. So I'm going to pull the sky highlights down a little bit. And then the shadows, pulling this up. It's getting a little muddy up here, but I think I can deal with it some kind of up there. Whites, pulling that out. My blacks, I don't want to bring it too much because again, it gets kind of grayed out. I lose my contrast there. So I want to kind of keep some of that in. And then we have the texture, which is going to crisp it up a little bit. Also with the clarity, it's going to be crisper. And the hazing, I'm going to vibrate, give it a little more saturation. So here's the picture now. Here's where it was. And you can see I've got a lot more detail down here. I especially have a lot more color going on down there. So I'm going to open this as an object. So if you just hit open, it just opens it up like a normal photo would be. But I want to open it as an object. That way I can come back and make changes should I need to. And remember, you can still copy this. I can take this and duplicate. And now it's a duplicate copy of the file with the adjustment to it or the smart object. One thing I want to note is if I make an adjustment here to the smart object, I'm going to exaggerate here, it's the blue. It changed it on both. Okay. So you may go, I want to work with one separate from the other. So what you want to do is instead of just copying, okay, you want to copy. Where's my option here? You want to make a copy of the file. So let me see here. Where is it? One second here. I'm trying to make a copy of the copy or make a copy of the file. So I'm just trying, I had it the other day. Okay, let me do this first. Okay, so here I want to duplicate, not duplicate layer. I want to duplicate as a new layer. Where is that? No rationalize, no. It's already a smart object. Give me a second here. You ever do something and just totally forget how you did it the other day? Because duplicating is not going to do it. What I'm trying to do is make it a new copy. So it's a copy of the copy here, which will then become independent with its smart object capabilities. I'm going to have to come back. I'm drawing a blank on it right now. Not artwork. I convert. I'm gonna come back to it because right now, like I said, if I make a change here, it's changing everything. Okay, it's changing that picture, but it's also going to change the one below. Okay, and I don't want to do that. I want to be able to change each one separately. So when I make that copy, it doesn't become it's a copy, but it's a copy with a separate smart object. And I just drew a blank on doing that. So I'm going to have to come back to that. So anyway, we can make those changes. We've done that. If you want the grass greener, you can go back to the raw file. If you want a browner or whatever you want to be, that's fine. And again, they are kind of adjustable at this point. Now, I like the rocks and the grass, and I'm good with that, but the sky's getting a little funky, and I think it could be better. So I want to let the computer do some work for me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit, and I want to replace the sky. Now, photography wise, many people go, well, I can't do that because it really wasn't the effect of the day. It didn't really look like that. I think it's okay to make adjustments to photos. Again, depending on what you're trying to do. If I was shooting for National Geographic, I would not do this, right? Because National Geographic's trying to show pretty much the picture how it was. Now, again, they're making adjustments, brightness, darkness, contrast. They're shooting raw. They're making the sky pump or the stars to appear better, but they're not replacing, okay? And in compositing, we start to do replacements. We're changing things up. We're bringing one object into another. And those that have watched that video saw that where the instructor was taking a bottle and they were putting things in the bottle and changing things up. And we're going to get into that because that's a big part of Photoshop. So replacing the sky is one of those kind of things with the compositing thing. So it's literally edit and go down to replace sky. And right now the computer's thinking, and it put this sky here that was built in. And again, I can go through, there's a variety of skies that are in here. And I can adjust the scale of them. So let's say I want that one for now. I can come in here and change the scale, bigger, smaller. And again, you want to have things that kind of look proportionate and feel like they're of the right scale. And again, this is something I would recommend you guys start to do, is start to take your own skies and your own images, and you can bring these in. Granted, we don't get a lot of cloudy days here in Southern California, but we do get some nice sunsets some days. And it's okay to take those and bring those into here. Okay, you can import those into your computer. Now, the shifting goes back to the mask, right? So it's going to put the light. You can see the shift goes one way or another. So it's basically making a mask into it. So sometimes you want to have it just at about, well, zero is where it starts. If you go to a plus, it's putting the mask a little bit over the edge here. Fade the edge. You can see what that did. So this is kind of a crisp edge. And this is kind of a softer edge. Okay, so we're getting. You'll also notice that it says foreground adjustments. What the computer is doing is starting to look at this picture and go, okay, I have a mask that's built in up here for the sky. And I know this foreground needs to kind of color match. So the computer is making color adjustments in here to kind of give it a little bit, in this case, a little bit more of the sunset look. So I'm just going to push it all the way up. And you can see there's an orangey haze built in now. Over here, there's not. So this is kind of the original, and the computer was doing some adjustments in there. And what it's trying to do is kind of make it look like it's sunset, even though it's really not, okay, because we're faking it out, but it's a good way to do it. And you can also play with the mode, which in this case, you can see the screen, it kind of pulled out the mountaintops, where multiply kind of brings in some of that darkness, kind of overlaying the multiply things. And once you're happy with it, you click OK, and it brings it in as a series of layers or groups that are built in on top. Okay, and I can turn that on and off. And you'll see even the picture down here is changing below with those adjustments. So again, in photography, we do this. I mean, I can't tell you to do it a lot. But I think it's definitely okay. And again, I'm not selling this as a fine art picture that you're going to buy and put on your wall. But if I was making an ad up for, I don't know, Sierra Water, some water company, I might want a beautiful sunset. And I just didn't have a sunset. I had a beautiful picture of Yosemite with the waterfalls, but I don't have a sunset. So this way I can start to bring it in. And let me see, did I grab the water bottle? I just want to, I'm just thinking here. I thought I grabbed one the other day. Some fish. Here's a bottle, because I was starting to get stuff together for class. Because we're gonna keep working with the compositing. Yeah, let me just open this up. I'm gonna open this up. I'm gonna copy it. I don't know how this is gonna come out, but we're gonna play and see. I'm gonna paste it as a new layer. It's mismatched, color profiles, whatever. Don't care. And I'm gonna put that here. I'm gonna put it above for right now, just so you can see it. And I'm gonna put the water bottle here. Maybe it's water, maybe it's even something better like whiskey or vodka coming. I'm gonna be coming in here. Now I want to get rid of the outlines for the background. So a couple ways I could do it from a compositing standpoint. I get Magic Wand, click it, and it got most everything but the shadow, which is good. I can also do layer, select, there we go, wait a second. On the right layer, whoops, I need to pull that out of that group there, sorry. Layer, select, I'm gonna hit the select subject. So I'm select subject, boom, hopefully it's gonna get it. All right, I got everything but a little bit down here in the bottom of the bottle. Did pretty good clipping. So I can either add that in by adding some additional areas there, or I can just kind of make it a mask. So I'm gonna say, make a mask. We have it selected, make the mask here. And it took away everything but that. Now I can come back in and paint this out, remember, right? With my brush, black will hide. So I'm just kind of painting that out. Because I'm not really, in this case, it's gonna be on grass. So I'm not too worried about shadows. I'm just gonna clip across here. And remember, if I mess up, I can come back in. Oops, I got a little crazy. Flip it back to white. And now, because I'm on my mask, I can paint my mask back in. So remember, the mask are a non-destructive thing, and I'm on my mask because it's got my brackets on the, in this case, the black side. So I'm just gonna kind of clip out this. So in the old days, we would do like a clipping path. We would use the pen tools and scrap all the way around. It just took forever. In this way, I can kind of work pretty quick, depending on the brush. It's a little soft, so I think that works because we're on the grass here. And let me just zoom back out. We've got that there. Now, again, it's not perfect because with the bottle, you're going to see through it, right? So in that case, I'm going to probably play with the blend mode, and I'm going to look and see what I can do to kind of get that blend mode to pop through. So right here, believe it or not, there's color coming through from below. I'm just trying to see what I can get here. That's not too bad. It's a little harsh, but so I'm trying to get the thing to blend through. So that's not, it's not perfect, but it's not bad. I can play with the opacity. And again, I can get that now to show obviously bottle coming through, but the bottle's not 100% there. So many times what I'll do is I'll play with opacity modes. And I might even duplicate this whole thing. So now they're both playing with a blended mode of 41% opacity, but because they're both there, I'm starting to get the background, right? I can see the cars, I can see the trees starting to happen up there. And I may play with this one and go back over where I want to keep some of the details. So I'm playing with the mode so I can get that. So I'm actually kind of blending multiple layers on top of each other to give me the effect that I happen to want in this particular case. So up here is normal. This is a tricky one. All right, we're just going to keep it there for now. So here, I'm basically bringing the bottle back in by building up layers. Now, there's things up here you're going to go, well, the cork is showing the trees behind it. You wouldn't be able to see through the cork. You can see through the neck of the bottle here. That's true, but you wouldn't see on the neck. Well, I can come up here. I can come back to the mask, and I can paint that mask in. So I'm going to paint the bottle back in because I don't want it to show through. And it's getting weird because I have multiple opacities going on here. You have to kind of work back and forth with this. And it may end up being a case where I bring in a third bottle. I think I need to bring in a third version of this. I'm going to put that below here. And I'm going to make a mask. Oops. I'm actually going to paint out, leave the cork in, but I'm going to paint out the bottle. So what I'm doing is actually painting this out. Okay, so as you see, as I start to do that, I'm going to be able to get the glass bottle to come back in. And we'll turn it back on just so you can see that. So now the neck or the cork is showing through all of that. And I may even play with that and putting the cork to the top to see if that makes any difference. No, it's not. And I'm just kind of working with the layers. Does that make sense? So this is what compositing is going to do to us. Bring us back and forth and allow us to kind of work other items into place. And the goal is to kind of give it some kind of imaginary thing. So if this was an ad, let's say I'm working for this water, liquor, whatever this company is, and putting the product down here in the corner, I'm going to build that up with that bottle. And I've got this really beautiful background with the sky. And then of course I need to add some text. And we'll add the text in. And now we've got something we can work with. Okay. But again, you start to see we're starting to get a lot of layers going on. We're getting a little complicated. And again, you don't know what things are going to be until the end. So I did this sky, but I put the foreground in first. So I may want to change my Yosemite a little bit, maybe make it a little bit more orangey to start with. I'm going to pull the exposure down a little bit. So a little bit more kind of we'll say sunsetty. Click OK. And now it did that, right? So we really kind of made some sunset passions going on. And that might be too much. So here I may need to come back up here. And this is the foreground layer. Okay. So I can play with that here, maybe drop the density down a little bit. And let's play with the curves here, brighten it a little bit. Okay, so we're just kind of playing with it to see, get kind of the color palette that we want. And we don't know these things until we start to work. So this is a good example of how we thought we were headed in one direction, and until we got into it, we realized it wasn't the way we wanted to go. Okay, so that's kind of a cool thing about kind of building composites up and being able to adjust things, and definitely being able to go back to the originals. Okay, so whether it be going back to the file here where you can make those adjustments, or coming back to something like playing with the original raw file. Okay, we can still do that because it's a smart object. All right, questions on what we just kind of played with. Again, this is what Photoshop is used most of the times for. I mean, yes, it's there for cleaning up the pictures and, you know, making them look pretty so you can print them out. But I would say as a designer, I'm more into compositing. We do this a lot. And then you guys, especially those are going to be in the animation. Geez, this is what animation is. It's all kind of compositing, bringing different things together, different ideas and textures, and merging them all to become one new image. And again, that's really kind of how the animation world ends up working. Questions?
I noticed when you brought the new sky in, it's kind of like pixelated in some places. Is that just because of like the original picture, or?
I'm sorry, say that again. The sky is what?
Yeah. If you look at the new sky that you put in,
Mhm.
see how it's like kind of pixelated right in the center a bit? Is that just because of like the original picture, or is that something like we can change?
It looks like it's actually pretty good resolution. There's a little bit in there, and that's probably because of the photo. But we can turn it off. Let's put a new one in. Again, the cool thing is I can turn off that sky and go, I don't like that sky. Let me put a new one in. And then we're gonna go back to, oh, I gotta be on the layer. Replace sky. Let it think first before you go too crazy. And let's say that one, we like that one instead. It's not too bad. Let me just scale a little bit.
Okay, I think I see what it is. I guess when you kind of play with the scale a bit, it sort of helps it go like to its original size and whatnot. So it makes
Yeah,
it
yeah. I mean, if I
less-
make this bigger, it's going to get pixelated. I'm sure,
Okay.
right? So I'm gonna scale it way up. I'm still thinking. Yeah, you can see there's pixelization going on here with the sky. So again, you want to shoot as high a resolution as you can. The bigger the resolution, the sharper it's going to be as you continue to work with it. Does that make
All
sense?
right.
So I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know what the originals are. These are ones that are coming with Photoshop now. So you guys all have these same skies. So I don't know. I'm sure they're pretty decent resolution. But again, you can download skies. You can obviously take pictures of skies. The biggest thing is to kind of get something that looks like it's proportional. Let me just zoom out here, see if I can. Because some of these just look weird. You know, when you end up clicking them. Let me just click on there. They just look proportionally, they look off. So again, that's where you can kind of play with the scale of them, and then you can also position them, right? So this here is at 100%, so there's not a lot to work with, but I can still enlarge it a little bit to give me a different look and feel. There's still room to play in there, even though there's some clipping paths and stuff like that going on. And again, if you don't like it, you can always go back to the other one, right? Or I don't want that one to go to this one. So you can flip back and forth. And it's all non-destructive. But I like the fact that and I'm starting to do this now, and I haven't uploaded them yet to my Photoshop, but picking my own clouds. That way whatever I'm compositing, it becomes mine. And the main thing is, like, this sunset, you'll start to see it sometimes. You're like, what, that looks familiar. Well, it's because they replaced it with Photoshop. And remember, we all have the same Photoshop, so we all have this sky. So it's not to say it's a bad sky, but the problem is that if you use it and I use it, next thing you know, a million people are using it, because there's a million people that have Photoshop, things start to look the same. Does that make sense? So even here, I would suggest that if you're doing skies, you kind of make as many changes as you can. So in this, let me pull up blue sky back again, the sunset. All right, so we're all using this and it's cool, we're happy with it, but there's things like you can flip it. So just that one little thing makes a difference. Okay, so you know, potentially think about flipping it, playing with the scale. So it's different. So it's going to come out looking different than just kind of the way it opened up and clicking OK. Because that, I think many times that's where we get into problems where things start to look the same. You know, and likewise, you can change the color temperature of it. And when you're all said and done, it looks totally different than where it was when it came in. Okay, so don't be afraid to work adjustments on the files when you open them. Does that make sense? So they look different than where they were initially. So when someone else is using that same sky, because again, we will, right? We're working on this ad. There's no reason why they couldn't use the same sky. Okay. I don't want this. This is going to show up in millions of places. If I put this in a magazine, it could be, you know, some big magazine, Time magazine or something. It's going to show up everywhere. And I'm trying to make it look a little different, even though as an expert, Photoshop expert, I can probably look and go, I look kind of Photoshopped. But my goal is not to make it look Photoshopped. And my goal is to kind of even fool those who know what they know about Photoshop. And given the right amount of time, I think you can do it. It just takes time. It takes patience and knowing that, you know, what I just did in 30 minutes in reality would probably take me, you know, 20 hours potentially to get this thing just right. I'm really looking at everything in there and working that bottle and how it sits. And, you know, I may go, well, you know what, I really need some grass in front of it just to make it look like it's sitting in the grass, or do some stuff like that where I'm going to clone in some stuff. So, you know, it takes time to kind of process and go through, and that's important. Okay. Otherwise, it looks fake, it looks rushed, and it will look, as we say, it'll look Photoshopped. Okay. And again, we can have the adjustments like now. I'm not crazy about the grass and the trees; they look too autumny, and so I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to cool them back up. I'm going to actually green it all up a little bit. And see, that feels much better to me. Okay. I'm going to make it a cloudy day, right? Or again, I still like that's a nice sunset. What I like about it is kind of like really pulls the focus in. Your eye really comes into this part of the photo, and then it gets drawn down by the waterfalls, and then hopefully it gets drawn over to the corner here where I have the bottle, and I'm going to have that bottle with you know, some company logo and a website and all that kind of stuff there. All right, questions? Let's see what else I'm going to cover today. We did raw, we did smart objects, and we started to play with compositing. And we will play more on Thursday. What I'm going to do for Thursday is I'm going to get some of these items like the bottle here and stuff put up on the website so you can have stuff to play with. And I'm also going to I'll get the first project officially written up so we have that to start on. What I want to do for homework, quote unquote, is to open up the raw files and open up any other pictures you have and convert them to smart objects. Okay, so go to your open, you download those raw files, hopefully. If you click on them, and kind of open them up and play with them in this interface. All right, and go through and see what you want to do and see how it all works. Again, the advantage of this is I can do it all at one time. Okay, I can play with all those objects at once. So even if I'm working with a regular JPEG, the girl that we've used all along, right? If, again, I'm going to convert to smart objects now. I think that's a kind of a good way to work. Let me just duplicate her. Turn that off. Because that way, if I do a filter effect, I can make that change. But I also want to come in here to this camera raw and play with the adjustments here. That way I can get my colors just right, and my tints and my exposures. And I'm doing it all at once. Okay, otherwise I'm doing it. Don't save. Otherwise I'm coming in here doing adjustment layers. And I'm going through the brightness contrast here, which is good, right? And I'm doing adjustments here, just for that. But now, okay, oh, that's cool, but I need to do a color adjustment. So now I'm gonna do another one. And let me just do the hue saturation adjustment. So we're gonna saturate a little bit more, but darken a little bit, maybe too much there. Okay, we've done that. All right, we're gonna put that just below. So we're making all of these adjustment layers, whereas I could just come in here. Oops, I don't want to do it that way. I can just come in here with the camera raw filter and make all of those adjustments at one time. And I can see how they interact with each other. So it gives you, I think, a smoother workflow to go through it this way. So you can say, okay, now that I've done one thing, okay, I've saturated it, maybe I need to bump up the exposure a little bit. Okay, and the contrast has to come in a little bit more, a little bit less. Pull the highlights up. So we can kind of see what we're doing, and we can do things. Okay, look at the hair. I'm pulling the hair in or pulling the hair out. What do I want? And I can see those adjustments all at one time as I'm working, instead of trying to build into 15 different adjustment layers. I can literally do all of that stuff in here, click OK, and come back. Okay, and you can see it's now a smart filter with the camera raw, and I can come in here and make adjustments with it, with the camera raw mode again. Now it's done, it's changing it. Okay, so because it's a smart filter, when a smart object, I can come back here, double click it, and make those adjustments. And not only that, let's say I want to put a little bit of, I don't know, some other kind of effect on here, some kind of filter. I wanted to do the tiles, they'll always look weird. That kind of effect would be cool. I can turn it on and off. If I don't like it, I can turn it off. And if I do like it and I want to change it, I can double click on it and I can say, the number of tiles is 20. And it added more tiles into the picture. Okay, so I can make those adjustments, and it's a non-permanent, it's a non-destructive thing. I can turn them all of these off, and we're back to where we started with. Okay, so again, it's all about non-destructive and being able to make adjustments and changes. Because if you start to think about it, we're building things on top of other things, and we don't really know what it's going to look like until we do it. Okay, we might have an idea in our mind, but we just don't know. Like, it's not the way I thought it was going to be. Turn it off. Right? You can delete it. Whatever you need to do, get rid of it, and then you can come back to the other things. So again, it's a much cleaner way of working than to have to start to build all these sub layers. We can do it with smart objects and something like the camera raw filter. Again, it just depends on what you're doing and how you're working. But I'm trying to give you the ways that you can do it, the ways that will be most effective with you. And these are all the filters. We'll go through some. A lot of these are just kind of play, but there's things like you might want to, color tone or add blur to things. Right now it's pretty sharp all over, but maybe I want to blur the picture. So I'm going to maybe select her I'm gonna make a new layer. And I'm going to inverse, meaning I'm going to select the opposite. So now it's selecting the outside, not the inside. And at that point, I can come back in with a, I'm going to make it a smart object with nothing in it, but I'm going to give it a blur. And let's give it a Gaussian blur. That's just empty. Okay. So you can put this blur on her and I can take that back out. But again, you're able to make adjustments with it. I don't know why it's selected. I need to do a mask. I'm not going to get into it now. But you can play with different layers and blur out certain things. And again, that's where the filters and effects would be. Sharpening. We'll go through these. You know, they're pretty quick to go through. Okay, but I want you to open up the raw files, open up just a regular JPEG, convert it to a smart filter, and then just start to play with it a little bit, okay, to get used to that. So as we get into compositing, starting on Wednesday, building up things, and we're going to be doing this kind of thing. We're adding in an object to a piece of scenery, and I think I'll get into some basic topography with you guys too, and that'll lead us into our first project that we're going to start on. And we'll have a couple weeks to work on that. It's not going to be due in like 2 days or anything. All right, questions? Anybody sneak in since we started?
About the smart objects,
Yes.
if you turn them into your smart objects, are you able to export them as normal images?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Anything you see, anything you see here, as I export this as a JPEG or TIFF or whatever I'm going to be, will look just like that. Okay. And likewise, I can save this as a PSD, and that will keep all the smart objects active. So yeah, everything will end up being exactly what you see. Okay, good question. Others? Other questions? Let's look in here, see if we can do a spin show.
All
right.
For the assignment from last week
Yes.
of the girl in Italy,
Yes.
do we have to turn that in,
No.
or where do we turn it in?
You don't need to turn it in. Unless you want, if you want to send it to me, you can email it to me, but no, I'm not collecting. I just want you to work. Everybody did okay with it, right?
Yeah.
Made it look better?
Yeah, it was fine.
Okay, that's I mean, that's the whole point, is to get you used to doing things and making it look better. No, I'm not going to collect.
All right.
If you want me to see it, feel free to email, you know, and I can look at it and comment it for you. But we're going to be moving into a project that I will be collecting soon. We're going to be making some record albums. So, but we'll get into that on Wednesday. Okay.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it should be. It's a cool project. All right. Anything else for today?
Nope, that's better.
All right. If there's no questions, thank you all. Have a great day. Again, open Photoshop, open up a camera raw, get used to that. Just kind of see how that works. And we'll work into more of that.
All right.
All right. Thank you guys.
See you then.
Bye.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you.
I came in about 10 minutes after your start time, so I don't think you got me on roll.
Let me check here. I got you. Yes, we're good.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
And then I'll be uploading the video in a couple hours when I get time to get it processed.
About the email project, I already emailed you, but
Oh, okay.
in assignment, it still said dual.
Yes, I got that.
Okay. Okay,
Uh-huh.
never mind that.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
I got to put in the grades for all those. It's whatever. It's just extra points, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Have a
Okay,
good,
thank you.
week.